Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 10th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Eric Donovan.
Full slate of races to bring you this week, including some of the highlights from TwinSpires.com Wood Memorial Day, the Wood Memorial itself, the Carter and the Bayshore. We'll get to those races a little bit later on, but we'll start things off with the fourth race from April 2nd, a maiden special weight for 3-year-olds and up going 6 furlongs a day when you wanted to be inside.
Yeah, we wanted to find one race from this April 2nd day, because this was a day of a serious gold rail. So we're going to talk about a horse who was favored, Vona, who I think a lot of people think ran worse than he did because he chased outside the whole way, 3 wide. And then a first-time start for John Sheriff, Sendario, and we'll show the dreaded gallop out.
Yes, the gallop out quite strong for the first-time starter, Sendario, but the Vona, you see, set up shop outside there, 3 wide throughout most of the way, chasing the pace, and a trip that just didn't work out throughout any part of the day.
Yeah, I don't like to endorse horses that come back and they're 8-5s, a new gelding, and lost by 5+ lengths, but I do think you really do have to upgrade this horse's performance. And this rail was so strong, it carried an improbable 60-1 shot home in our 8th race, albeit in a weaker field. Vona was compromised. Of course, cost effective will suck people in again. This horse pretty much saved ground, railed a 2-path, angled out in the stretch, and had no excuse, even though the winner was on the rail. That horse battled the whole way, a long shot firster. Vona forced to chase outside in a tough position. Sendario might be the more interesting one, though, coming back in here, because actually he's not really in the picture. Vona is out there. You'll see a horse in blue come in the stretch shortly, but we'll show you that horse again when we show the gallop out.
Yeah, there's Sendario in the back toward last right now, and will come on with a good late rally here, and you see the horse that we're looking at also, Vona, still battling away there on the outside, cost effective, every chance to win the race, and can't get by the long shot first-time starter who took advantage of that rail position, Jay to the Croft.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps you could say cost-effective if the track had been more even, may have gotten there. But, saving ground behind a 3-horse duel and angling out is a pretty good trip. So you see Sendario moving into second to last of the finish. Now we're going to circle Sendario, who's still way back as they're approaching the finish, but this will be a head-on that turns into a pan. And you're going to see how Sendario, once he sort of gets his legs under him, and sometimes you don't make that much of gallop outs, but I got to say, Eric, with this first-time starter, he really seemed to have some run. And you do wonder the way the rider was riding him at the end, if they kind of knew they needed to get one into him.
Yeah, it seems like a logical point that you make there. I would think that's the case. I mean, how much do you look at these gallop outs, though? Because obviously, I mean, the 2's on the lead the whole way. They're at the finish, and there's the 1 splitting those horses right now, Sendario coming through. But he's passing tired horses at the end.
Yeah, or horses that are being eased, even if they're not as tired. And, it's a mixed bag. I mean, I can argue with people that they can look at a number of different ways, but the truth is, I don't want to make too much of them, but with a first-time starter, especially a horse like this, you just get the feeling he needed a race. It's a horse that had been prepping last summer, obviously some issues to come back, and John Sheriff's a trainer. These horses sometimes do improve second time out.
All right, we'll see how they both do. I'm a little bit more bullish on Sendario than I am on Vona, but we'll see how Vona runs.
I think that Vona is a horse that you can upgrade his performance a little bit. I know he was disappointing, and some people say, well, he was third, beaten 5 lengths, doesn't really matter, but I don't think it's as bad as it looks, but I agree, I wouldn't take a short price on it.
Okay, we'll move on to our next race now, the 7th race from April 3rd, New York bred 2 other than allowance optional claimer, going a mile. We're taking a look at the 4 Sinistra.
You knew there was not a lot of speed and paper, and the 7 Big Deluxe will be able to control the pace, and that's what riders, if riders are preparing, and I think that's one of the criticisms I think we've had over the winter, is there seems to be some lack of preparation on some riders' parts. They have to think, how am I going to adjust the fact that there's a horse with talent who may be distance challenged, but he's the lone controlling speed. Sinistra's a horse who improved his game on the inner track by having some speed, yet he ends up last, and the rider has him under a throttle the whole race. I mean, this is a bad ride from start to finish.
Yeah, he gets him in a bad spot early on, burying him in traffic behind horses there in this slow pace, 23 and 4, 47 and 2. Actually, the race, the pace from time-wise wasn't really that slow, but it plays out kind of slower in the races because there's no moves going on here, and you see Sinistra toward the back of the pack still with the Rosario Martinez and a handful.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's like you took him back to last, you're strangling him back. Okay, you've done that. Now you're in that spot. Maybe you want to save ground and hope you get lucky. No, that's not what the rider does. He makes a 4-wide, half-mile, 7/16 move. So it's like the worst of all worlds, Eric, and the horse who ends up beating the favor is the one sitting inside behind who nails him at the wire. Though 4 hit the wire together, it's hard to believe, Eric, that Sinistra wasn't best.
Oh, yeah, no, I think if Sinistra sits in behind Cousin Michael here and just gets a patient ride and swings out or tries to find some room top of the stretch, would have been much better off than making that 4-wide move here. And this is a horse that gets beat 3/4 of a length, a blanket finish really, essentially here, and just never stops running.
Yeah, and it's like once you've made the decision that he made early, Now you got to dance for the girl that brought you there. You've taken the horse back. If you've taken the horse back, why would you make this 4-wide middle move? You've made a decision to consciously take him totally out of the race, and then you go, oh, maybe that wasn't the best decision. Well, geez, I mean, maybe the time to make that decision was before the race started. Sinistra, I think what was interesting about this was Sinistra's a horse that we saw him improve significantly this winter, and you wondered, was he an inner track type horse? But he showed with this race that the outer track's just fine with him.
Yeah, he's a 4-year-old gelding who's in a very good form right now when he gets the right kind of setup. We'll take a look at the 5th race now from Wood Memorial Day. Before we get into the stakes, this was a non-winners of 1 New York bred allowance going 6.5 furlongs.
Wanted to talk about a horse a number of us were interested in, Wild Finish. I think both of us had this horse in play. An easy horse to see. He got pretty bright yellow colors, but he breaks a little slowly. And keep in mind, we're not going to stop it before this happens, but just watch him in here. You're going to see him get pinched off by that one in front of him, and he drops almost totally out of the race, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the horse right here, you'll see him get pinched off a little bit, and it just takes him a while to get his feet back under him, it seems like. I mean, it takes him a good, 16th of a mile to be able to get back some of that position.
And keep in mind, while we saw some horses make some runs in here, the winner of the race is the horse on the inside in the lead. So it wasn't a race that was super conducive to horses coming from that far back, and he got that far back because of trouble, and he'll have more trouble in this race.
Yeah, again, it's more trouble at the top of the stretch, kind of get caught in a little bit of a blind switch, I guess, maybe?
Well, I think it's actually an interesting case of herding. The other horse is actually herding him in, and you can see him sort of coming over, and as he herds him in towards a pack. And you see him right there in the yellow, and it's actually the horse in blue outside of him. They'll come in the stretch together, and keep your eye. We'll stop it and show it again. But what's going to happen is they both want to separate. And I think it's one of the problems, Eric, of trying to rally inside another horse. You can be victim to what that horse does. He's maintaining his position, which I think is fine. But the problem is that as you see them going in from there, I think it's the 2 horse.
Yep.
He's going to sort of force him in from there. You see him? He's kind of lugging in. Yep. They're coming out in front of him, and he just gets completely shut off.
Yeah, the 10 and the 1A come out a little bit, as they get a little bit tired, and just a tough spot to have to go through horses like that. Much better to be on the outside.
Yeah, and it seemed like he had more horse than the 2. And you see how the 2 rallies to finish 4th in there, and the 2 is Jackson Wild, ridden by the 10-pound bug rider, Kay Davis, and there's been some situation in the stretch with her, a couple of them. So I don't know what exactly happened there, but I know Wild Finish was unlucky.
He seems like a horse that doesn't take adversity all that well. You saw him get pinched off in the backstretch. He really seemed to react to that, where he dropped back a couple lengths, and then he gets pinched off in the stretch there, and then he just kind of goes into idle a little bit.
Well, he missed a lot of time. He may have some issues, and that could be contributing to that. And he's also a horse that used to have some speed. Maybe they wanted to think about using his speed a little bit more. Maybe he doesn't have it anymore.
Stay out of those
Whatever
spots.
the case is, he'll be 3rd off a layoff. He had one start where he was against the bias, and this one he had a tough trip.
All right, we'll get on to the stakes action now, taking a look at the Bayshore for 3-year-olds going 7 furlongs here. We're going to look at the 3 Financial Mogul and the 4 Coup de Grace collide at the start here.
I thought that this was like a great trip handicapping race, Eric. I mean, first of all, the 4 comes in a little, the 3 comes out a little more. I mean, they look like Rock'em Sock'em robots. I mean, they slammed into each other, these 2. It's amazing they both recovered as well as they did. Kobe's back got left a couple lengths. I think a lot of people missed a lot of important things in this race because they were overly focused on the favorite, Kobe's back.
Yeah, Kobe's back breaks about 3 or 4 lengths slower,
2,
but that's...
2 at most.
2 at most? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the front horses, you're looking at the back horses.
Well, I'm looking at where, I think when you look at horses breaking slowly, you want to stop the frame and see where is this horse in relation to the field when he breaks.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's important. But regardless, he breaks slowly, but he's a deep closer too, and he's a horse that's had issues at the start before. I think Javier Castellano rode a masterful ride here. You see him clearing off from the 3 and putting some separation between the 2. But this is a situation where Jose Ortiz, who's riding the 3, and there's the 4 Coup de Grace who wins, there's the 3 Financial Mogul. If Jose Ortiz, I think he can do a few things. He can continue inside of the 4, he can go outside of him for a clear run, or he can try to follow him. What happens here is Javier subtly drifts out a little bit, and I believe he sort of suckered Jose into the hole inside of him, and it will end up completely blowing up in his face.
Yeah, that's a clever move by a seasoned veteran in Javier Castellano as a Financial Mogul comes up the inside there, and now you have a horse that needs to rally that also needs to get clear where, Castellano could just sit on the outside and keep him on the inside.
Right, and I was circling the 2 Oliver Zip, who we're not talking about. He had a perfect trip and great ride, because what's going to happen is, as they come around in the stretch, The 4 will keep him in with Javier, and the 2 will shut the door on the 3 Financial Mogul, and he will lose all of his momentum trying to rally. You see the gray Kobe's back. He's gotten himself in the picture, and a lot of people felt he would roll on by. I think they misunderstood, and there are the 3 and 4 right there. Kobe's back right behind him in the gray. You're seeing Financial Mogul getting shut off. He's got a head of steam. This is when the race is really developing. He gets totally shut off. He loses his momentum. He loses his position. Now Jose wants to go outside with him, but those horses are coming over, and now he makes the fatal mistake of sort of ducking in towards the inside for running room. You're better off rallying inside. This horse just lost any kind of momentum he had, and he even rallies after that.
Yeah, and Andy, I mean, he goes down to the rail. Looks like he's going to make a run. He gets down to the rail and he just flattens out. You see a lot of horses get down there and just say, that's it. You know, I'm not running down here.
I think it had a little outside flow, this track, a little bit of an outside flow. You know, Financial Mogul, I think what he showed in here, and I'm not saying he was going to win the race, and he might have. You don't know what he would have done exactly. He clearly had a lot of trouble. What about Kobe's back? What do you do with this horse going forward?
I don't know what to do with him. I mean, people will bet him because he broke slow in here and think he had some trouble. You know, I'm on the fence about about him overall in general. I don't think he's, as good as he's been made out to be so far.
Yeah, I think he's very good.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're not saying he is, but he shouldn't have been 6-5 in this race. It's a very, very competitive field. And, we talked about this in the National Racing Report. Breaking slow from the far outside post, that's not a great sign. I mean, you get the outside post. The one thing you say is the horse will be more comfortable out there. He just seems to be a horse that comes out of the gate sluggish, and he's going to do it over and over again. Maybe it doesn't really matter because he seems to put that kick in, but he's not good enough to beat these kind of talented horses consistently by spotting them a couple lengths.
No, he's going to need fast paces and a little bit of luck if he's going to come out of the gate that slow.
And I also think that Financial Mogul and Coup de Grace are 2 horses that have a little more speed. If the race doesn't have as fast a pace, I think they can put himself in position.
Oh, if they didn't crash at the start there, they could have been both in 2 or 3 lengths back.
But that's something worth noting, and I think it also means that both of them ran better than it looks. An interesting race.
All right, we'll get on to the highlight of the afternoon now. The TwinSpires.com Wood Memorial, about an 8th the distance here for the 3-year-olds. The favorite on the outside, Social Inclusion.
Social Inclusion runs terrifically. You saw him break about a half to a length slow and forcing him to rush what was a very contested pace. I thought Uncle Si was a horse that should be noted in here. We're not saying that he was the best horse, but my initial reaction was, well, Uncle Si unfortunately took a step back. Now, I'm not saying he took a step forward, but his performance was not bad at all. In fact, he ran sneaky okay.
He did. He broke a little bit slowly, and then he's parked out about 4 wide going into the first turn.
Yeah, and Social Inclusion in front of him. And you will see him sort of rally a little at the end. It's not as though he has anything particularly eventful happen to him after that, Eric, but once you have a horse like him break slowly, he's taken out of position, he's wide in the first turn, he's got no chance. Horses like this give up and run last, and I like that he still had some run at the end. Let's talk Social Inclusion.
Social Inclusion's up on the pace here, vying with the Chivarelli, who actually stays on pretty well himself. He's only beaten 5 lengths in here for the third start.
Chivarelli's a horse if given a little time, and he showed that mud race was no fluke. He could turn out to be a very good one for Eddie Keneally. I really thought Social Inclusion ran terrifically. Once again, a lot of people focus on he was a short price, they had these high expectations. Oh, he was a bit of a flash in the pan, or he disappointed. I don't think he disappointed at all. I thought he ran a terrific race.
He ran well. I'm still on the fence about distance with him. I think he might end up being better at, a mile and a 16th a mile this year, maybe perhaps next year. Yeah, it is. But
how many mile and a quarter races is he going to have to worry about?
No, but I mean, if he's going to mile and an 8th, if he's going to be a good horse next year.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine a mile and 1/8. I mean, this is a fast pace. He's up there. Uncle Si's back there. This is a pretty quick pace. I know the race held together fairly well, but it was still, in terms of pace figures, a quick pace. Uncle Si's trying to rally a little bit. Wicked Strong makes that nice move when he gets out in the clear. Samrat is chasing. I think they all ran pretty well. I just feel like Social Inclusion, he didn't get anything his own way in this race. A complete opposite of last time, Eric.
No, he had to do some work in here to put those horses away. The eventual second-place finisher, Samrat, is on the outside. Social Inclusion on the lead right now, and then down on the inside, Chivarelli fighting on well, too. And then here comes the fresh-legged Wicked Strong to pick them all up at the end.
Well, listen, Wicked Strong to me, and I'm not saying he's going to win the Derby, but he is certainly the kind of horse that you want for the Derby, because you know that he's going to handle getting some dirt in his face, he's going to handle closing, and there haven't been a lot of big performances by horses you're comfortable can come from 15th in this race, and he feels like he's one of them. Doesn't mean he's going to win the Derby, but he certainly showed that he can deal with the pace, and he can put himself in position, because he wasn't even that far off the pace either, and the Derby, he's going to get more pace to run into.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come down to trip in the Derby, as it usually does, I think, trip and pace.
So what's going to happen to Social Inclusion, though?
It's a good question. Does he get in?
Hopefully he doesn't get in, because that would be bad for him, because he'll run 18th if he gets in my opinion. I wish he wouldn't run the Preakness, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not saying it because we run it here. I think he's a horse who would be better suited to look at races like the Peter Pan and or Dwyer and be looking at whether it's the Haskell or the Jim Dandy and then the Travers as his objectives. Give him some time. Allow him a chance to mature a little bit on the racetrack instead of constantly putting him in races where maybe he's one race away from being ready for.
Yeah, you'd hate to see him go into a race like the Kentucky Derby, things not work out, him have to run hard, and then need some time off. What if he goes in there with very little seasoning and something happens and he needs 5 or 6 months after that? Then you lost your whole season.
And you don't need to be effective in the Triple Crown races to be 3-year-old champion. Will Take Charge had trouble in the Derby, didn't run that badly, bombed in the Preakness in Belmont, and by the end of the year he was clear. He could have been horse of the year. I mean, he was maybe a nose away from being horse of the year, and he was a clear-cut 3-year-old champion. So you don't need to win those races, and I think he's a very good horse, and I hope that they give him the opportunity to show the kind of good horse he is.
Looking forward to see how these horses run in their next starts and really throughout the year in 2014. One more race to bring you, the final Grade 1 stake of the day on Saturday, the Grade 1 Carter for 3-year-olds not going 7 furlongs.
I think one of the biggest problems in this race was what happens in the start. It shows how important starts are. Clearly now breaks about a half-length slow, and the 3-horse Golden Ticket comes over and shuts him off here. And what happens is the main speed Dad's Caps at this point is able to dictate an extraordinarily slow pace and effectively turn a 7-furlong race into a 4 or 5-furlong race with an advantage. If Clearly Now breaks cleanly, he's the horse that has the speed to have gone with him and the talent to win the race. He's shut off here. I thought Nakatani gave a very good ride on Sahara Sky, a deep closer, sensing the slow pace and putting him at least in position to do as well as he could.
No, he did. And Sahara Sky is, a solid horse.
This was a big race by him.
I mean, he fires. I mean, with the exception of that race off the layoff, he fires every time. Doesn't get there every time, but he puts in a good effort. And Dad's Cap's able to cruise.
Well, because Jose Ortiz has got Clearly Now moving up. He knows the pace is slow. The field is bunched. Why wouldn't he have been more aggressive going forward? Instead, he gets his position going backwards. You see the two of them there. And I know that he's in a tough spot. It's not his fault he got left and he got squeezed off after that. But I really think when they're going slowly, how can you think, I'll be better off rating this horse and taking him back on the pace? I think you got to go and force the issue a little bit and hope to create some separation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tough point at that tough spot at that point. Yeah, he's in a bad spot here, but he guns to the lead. He gets hooked up with the 4, and then he fades. And you can always play devil's advocate, I guess.
You can always play devil's advocate, and it's very easy to sit here and tell people how they should ride horses while we're comfortably sitting in chairs. And I realize that I'm as guilty of that as anyone. But having said that, tactically, you've got to have a plan B. In this case, I'm not sure there was one. Sahara Sky makes the run in here. Clearly Now just continues to drop out of the race. I think he'll have a big year. Jose Lozcano, his regular rider, probably be on him. A lot of people complained, and they said, Corey let the other horse get away. He didn't get away. He's got a big burst of speed, Dad's Cap, and he went slow for the first 4 to 5 furlongs, so he was able to run away with his quick 16th to an 8th burst, and Sahara Sky had been used more than he wants to be used to be comfortable, so he got away from. Then Sahara Sky keeps running at the end. I thought this was an absolutely terrific performance by Sahara Sky that sets him up to have a significant chance to repeat his Met Mile win of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was second in the Carter last year, went on to win the Met Mile over cross traffic and a race of his career so far. And we'll see if this second place finish will do the same this year.
I would argue that this was a better performance than this Carter last year.
Oh, yeah.
Where his second place finish was okay. This was a tougher field, and he faced very adverse situations. I still like Clearly Now a lot and believe that in his second start he will run much better. His trainer's horses often need one start.
Is he going to run on the Met too?
I have to think he'll run the Met. This is a horse that could win any of the Met, the Vanderbilt, the Forgo, and the Vosburg. He is that kind of good, and he can go 6. You wonder if a mile's the limit in the stretch for him. I don't worry about 6 and 7. I do worry sometimes about needing some help, as does Eric. Trips and traps at NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching.